soon as you're done with the semester, first thing you do is you usually sell the book. So that's done. And your notes are usually in such a disorganized fashion. If you're a pack rat, might like maybe go in the closet and never be pulled out again. Right. If you're like other students, you just kind of throw them away. So all that knowledge is gone anyway. Whereas on an electronic medium, it's there pretty much forever.
And not only is it thrown away, but it has to be disposed of in a landfill somewhere, or it has to be burned, or it has to be recycled. All costs energy. It has to be transported there. All costs energy. Another thing I was thinking of when I was there another question?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
My question actually is, I agree with you to a certain extent, but then it's not the downside to this. I totally agree. I'm in for the goal with digital, but it's true. That needs to be looked at from another perspective. Is the fact that until we can get to that point of working out some of the extra bugs, because I can recall transmitting a paper. I emailed it. It never got to that point of final destination. So I was caught unraveling myself emotionally because I knew I had attempted to do it. The professor did not receive it. So therefore, it was delayed, and it resulted in, rather than an A, you got a B, because you had to go back in. So I agree with you. Also, on the downside, the textbooks, I agree with you totally. If we go that way, fine. But for some classes, you may have to, wait a little bit further down the line. Because you buy these textbooks, it's just like buying a car. You get that car, a medical car, you drive it off the lot, immediately you've lost value. You try to return these books after purchasing the books, and you pay $150 for a book. You return it, get only $14 now. So I agree with you guys with that. That's the downside. But I think it's going to be a distant moment before we can proceed replacing the textbooks in its entirety.
Sure, and I agree. We're not there yet. But we need to shift the paradigm from I think instructors now, good instructors at least, are asking themselves, can I integrate digital into my classroom? Which is good. But at some point we need to get the paradigm to, how do I get physical out of my classroom? What can I do to make my textbooks and my papers and all the different things that I do that are inefficient, how can I get those out? We're close, and I agree with you. The systems aren't there yet, but we need to put some people on it. And as long as the publishers are still selling textbooks, they're not going to be interested or making room in the market for people who are doing digital forms of learning. Yes?
Every state in the union has compulsory education law. Up to the age of, well, it varies from state to state, but up to the age of 16 to 18, you have to spend roughly 10 or 12 years, required by law, 10 or 12 years in school. And the logic behind that is that the society as a whole benefits from having an educated population, and this is the way we're going to get it. I'm 60. I haven't been in school for a long time, and I don't know what this obsession is with cramming everything into kids before they hit the age of 18. I have learned a lot, an awful lot, in the past several years, and a great deal of that, nearly all of it, has been online. It's amazing what you can accomplish. I think if the country is really not concerned about having an educated populace, what they ought to do is take all the textbooks, all that core knowledge that's so important mean, you don't have to be the younger generation to see that.
I agree. And I think we've nicknamed it the information superhighway, but it's not really what it is. It's not actually what we use it for. It's the entertainment superhighway would be a much better term for it. And if we could get more information on the information superhighway, I think we'd be doing a lot better. I think your point's well taken. Anybody else? I want to say one thing about conservation, and you're not going to like this, Professor. But as we use less, there is a cost. And the cost is somebody's job. As we use less paper as a nation, some logger isn't cutting it down, some truck driver isn't driving it, some retail store isn't selling it. So we can't ignore, as we start talking about efficiency, we can't ignore that there's a back end to this. And it makes it so much more important for us to train here to be efficient, to be smart, to be tech savvy. Because as we eliminate some of those jobs by moving towards efficiency, we've got to be prepared to step in and innovate in new roles. As students, those jobs in the future aren't going to be there for us because we have to face global warming. We got to do something about it. So as we use less and those jobs disappear, there's got to be new jobs for us to step in, or we're all going to be out of luck. So we don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot, which means we need to be training now in these classrooms to think efficiently and to think proactively for the future. And we need to be training for those high-tech jobs. We need to be training for those high-tech jobs. And we cannot afford anymore to be going to school in classrooms where instructors are not using email. That is the most basic, email's been around for a decade, and it's the most basic thing. And we need to be able to rely on an email going to somebody. We need to be able to rely on that. And if we don't have systems in place that are doing that, we are not preparing our students to be lifelong learners or to college. Anybody else? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you
It was
very
a pleasure.
much,
Jonathan. Oh.
Our next speaker is at 4:30. So if you want to take us